Welcome to the Cricket Fixes podcast, where we tackle the tough topics of personal development, sprinkled with some raw vulnerability and a touch of humor. I'm your host, Cricket, and each episode we're diving into the realms of healing, growth, and self-discovery. So let's be fearless and awesome together. It's time to get your Cricket Fix. Hey, you're in for a treat, and I absolutely know so many of you are going to relate to this podcast show. I have Angie Hawkins, the Inner Glow coach, as well as the author of Running in Slippers. And today we are talking about going from self-loathing to self-loving. Angie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Krista. Thank you for having me.
I think your story is such an important and powerful one. And I personally related to it, just coming from such a dark past or point in life and being able to then literally 180 it to find yourself, the love that you have for yourself, and a life that you can truly dive into. So I'm going to let you take it away from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will relate to what I'm saying. And the reason I kind of already know that, because I'm basically giving the cliff notes of what's already in my book, Running from Slippers. And the overwhelming feedback that I get from the book is how relatable it is, because people will reach out to me and be like, this thing happened to me, that thing happened to me. And it's the stuff we don't normally talk about. So my story begins, like most of us, in childhood. I grew up in a home. The best way I can describe it, because I don't want to criticize my parents. They were doing the best that they could, but
Sure.
they were both very emotionally unavailable. And as an adult, I understand what that means, and I can understand why they are that way. But as a child, I didn't have the tools to make sense of that. So the way I interpreted the whole situation is I developed this belief that I didn't deserve to be loved.
Mm.
And as you're probably aware, your beliefs dictate your behaviors, which dictate what you experience in life. So,
Yeah.
needless to say, I struggled for many, many, many years because I was a people pleaser. I was always chasing love and approval outside of myself. I was always the straight A student, the overachiever at work, because I felt like I had to earn these external things to prove my worth, because I didn't feel inherently worthy without any of these things. And it's such an exhausting way to live. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled, but I didn't know any other way to live. And even if there was like a glimmer, like maybe it was a possibility for me, I just didn't even feel worthy of it or feel that it was available for me. I could see other people doing it, and I just felt like, well, that's just not for me. Which,
Totally, because you had this pattern of that gap, right? And
yeah,
so if anything came within and that love came within, it didn't make sense for what you know. I think a lot of people are just becoming wise to the programming and the parenting that we received early in our formative years is really what we're drawing in, attracting, what we're making available or not. We're
yeah.
recreating that same pattern because that's what the brain knows.
Yeah, it's insane how that sticks with you your entire life and is just running on this unconscious
Yeah.
program.
Yeah. Yeah. So, weave us through that kind of like that unfortunate low point that really kind of shook things up.
Yeah, and it really started in early 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away.
Hmm.
And I was 37 at the time, and I had spent 37 years doing everything I could not to feel my feelings. And I was in such profound grief that it was impossible not to feel them. Yet I didn't have the tools for emotional regulation. So I
Yeah.
basically felt like a zombie for the rest of the year. That's the best way to describe it. It was probably one of the worst years of my life.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of 2018, probably with like the New Year's resolution type stuff going on, I was like, okay, for the one of the first times in my life, I finally had this like motivation and hope to like have agency over my life, because I was like, I want to make some changes. I was basically sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I decided, I was living in Chicago, and I was like, I'm going to move to Hawaii. And in hindsight, it was well intentioned, because I was proactively doing something
Right.
to, because I wanted to be happy. Also, at that time, I would not consider myself a courageous person. So it was a very courageous thing to do at that stage in life.
For
It was
sure.
not well intentioned, in the sense that I was still reaching for things outside of myself to be the thing that made me feel happy. But
Hmm.
so I moved to Hawaii. You cannot move away from your problems. I will be the first person to tell you that. And so I moved here. I still had the exact same problems. But not only that, I developed this whole new roster of issues. So, for example, this was
Mm.
2018. So it was before remote work was the trendy thing to do. But I was very fortunate. My job allowed me to move here and still keep my job. But when I moved, there was this huge management shakeup at work that threatened my role. So the entire first year that I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. I had a really hard time making friends, which felt very lonely and isolating, especially since I was thousands of miles away from anyone I knew. And the other major thing that happened right off the bat was, to prove how all in and committed I was to my decision, I bought a condo immediately. And then a month after I closed, a shared pipe backflowed into my bathroom sink, and I wasn't home. So my entire condo flooded, which that
Oh
would
my
have been
God.
stressful anyway, right? But
Oh
like
yeah.
on top of all this other stuff,
Oh,
and again, I'm reaching for these things to make me happy, and they're not going very well. And so then, unfortunately, because this was 2018, so the next 2.5 years, it was like thing after thing. Like my grandma died. It was like there was always something. So my external world was unraveling,
mm,
and then my internal world was also unraveling. And then COVID happened. So I don't think I have to explain how that made it worse.
right.
And then,
So
so the
much
struggle,
worse.
yeah. So then the true catalyst was the end of a relationship during COVID. And I think we all have moments like this, because I feel like I've noticed this trend in my life and other people's. When it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, I've
So we,
noticed that too.
yeah,
I've
so we all
experienced
have, so
that.
we all have these moments of like, I can't handle anymore. I can't take this anymore. So I was definitely feeling those feelings. But then just layered on top of that was this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness, because it was like I had tried to do
Yeah.
something to be happier. It didn't work out. Nothing had been going well. And I truly could not see any hope for the future, which is such a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
So I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety medication. And I spent a day and a half unconscious in my bathroom. I spent another day and a half in the
Wow.
hospital. And I was released from the hospital. I came home and I called a friend, and I told her everything that happened. And I said, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And I was still like really high and out of it when I was talking to her, but it was so profound that it sent a cold chill down my body and
Mm,
really hit me, because I was like, like maybe I have a purpose. So it was her words
mm.
that was like the true catalyst of like, okay, I want to turn my life around, and I want to do it the right way. So that was
Yeah.
like the true turning point.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I I'm going to make sure that we put some good links in the show notes for suicide prevention, because and I'm so glad that we're talking about it, because I don't think we talk about it enough.
Agree, because it's very heavily censored, and I do understand some of the reasons why, but there's also things I don't understand, because there's so many people who struggle, and I
Yeah.
feel like if the conversation was more normalized, then it would be easier for people to get help. And also
Yeah.
on what you just said, and there's nothing wrong if you put the links, but a lot of the help is focused on like, don't do it. And
Right.
I've talked to other attempt survivors and just other people, but like what you need in that moment is just someone to hold space to feel how you feel, because you're already
Yeah.
feeling you're already feeling a certain way, and to have people tell you don't feel that way just kind of adds on to it. So you whether
Yeah,
it's a
thank you for sharing
yeah,
that. I think
whether
it's
a
yeah,
hotline or someone else, you need a
yeah.
safe person who can just hold that space for you to feel how you feel.
Oh, what a good message for everyone right now to look at who can hold safe space for you, because almost no matter where you live, of course there's always rural areas that make it even more challenging, but there are communities where people are well versed in quote unquote holding space
Yeah.
and getting help. I always say that validation is one of the most, at least for me personally, and I've witnessed this in my interactions, genuine validation turns the volume down on big emotions so fucking fast.
Yeah. I
And so I
totally agree with
totally
that.
get what you're saying about don't do it, don't do it. It's what you needed to hear was, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
part of my hospital stint, I was in the emergency room, but then they transferred me to the psych ward, and it was all about like restraining me so that I didn't harm
Yeah.
myself. And it's like,
Yeah.
honestly, I just needed a hug. You know what
I
I mean?
know. I do know what you mean. I do know what you mean. Oh my gosh, we're so ill-equipped to handle
Yeah.
it.
Because
Yeah.
that actually gave me more trauma than anything else that happened.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm super grateful that you had someone in your life to say it's not your time
Mm.
yet. It's
Oh,
not.
yeah. I mean, because like she could have said a lot of other things, right? Like, I'm glad you're here or whatever. But just the way that particular sentence hit me, because I was
Mhm.
feeling worse than I did before I took the pills. So I was kind of
Yeah.
at this crossroads because I was like, I don't want to be here. And and then the other funny thing about, because I didn't want to tell anyone what happened. I wasn't planning on calling
Sure.
anyone or telling anyone, but I was basically out of pocket for 3 days. So my phone was off. Oh, and this was during COVID. So they released me from the hospital, and all of my stuff was in plastic bags. And they were like, you can't open the bags until you get out of the hospital. So, and I was still high, and they just like dumped me on the curb, and I had these plastic bags.
Oh.
And I didn't know I was unconscious for a day and a half. So I turn on my phone, and that's when I realized like what day it is, and I had all these
Oh my
texts.
gosh.
And that, but this is the crazy part. That particular friend, she had hosted a workshop, and I missed it
Mhm.
because of all the stuff. And but she was worried about me. She's like, why didn't you come? Are you okay? So logically I was like, I just need to call her and let her know that I'm okay. But
Right.
I was like, the emotional intensity was still there, so like I could not pretend like everything was okay.
Right.
But that's how I ended up calling her. So like even the timing of like how it
Wow.
happened in her workshop, because I never would have called her, but that was the exact conversation I needed. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was all pretty divine timing.
Well, and her words, right? Her words then gave your brain a job. If it's
Yes.
not your time yet, that means then I must be here to do something.
Yeah, and that's actually how I ended up writing my book, because I was like, I just like knew in that moment. I was like, I have a purpose and I'm determined to figure out what it is. And I had the idea for the book because Running in Slippers, it's a memoir and it covers and I had the idea before the attempt, but it now the published book includes that part. But the whole idea was, we see on social media, everything we see is filtered and edited. And even in real life, we wear these social masks and pretend that everyone things okay. And I was like, what if I just wrote this book about real life and like the shitty things that happen? But again, like I was before, I just really didn't have the courage to allow myself to be seen. But then when I was like, I have a purpose. I don't know what it is. This book it was like my intuition. I way more tapped into my intuition now. So the fact back then that I wasn't really tapped into my intuition, but I could feel the pull, I was like,
Yeah,
I think that has something to do with it. So that's how I ended up publishing the book.
that is remarkable. And it's what's really interesting, talk about divine alignment. I was just doing a human design reading today, and mine talked about this intuition that I had to develop. That's a part of who I am. I didn't have to develop it. I had to remove the conditioning, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That
because we
was
all have it.
yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, before I knew I had it, I just ignored it all of the time. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, that was stupid.
Yeah, or I didn't trust it. And I didn't have reason to trust it
Yeah.
because I was always in conflict with my conditioning versus my essence, right? The essence of who I am. And I think that's what you're talking about when you hit these low places, but you realize that there's something bigger, that there is a purpose. It really does force you to say, okay, I'm going to figure out who I am, and I'm going to dive into some really powerful healing techniques cuz I'm cracked open right now.
Yeah. Because life felt so fragile
Mm,
and I knew something had to change. So yeah, and people always ask me like, well, if you could do something different or go back and tell yourself something, like maybe a cautionary message or something. And I was like, I would not change anything. Like, as horrible as all of that was, like, that's what led me to where I am now. So unfortunately, it had to happen that way. But
yeah.
it also happened that way because I was ignoring my intuition and my path.
Yeah. So how did you find your way out of it?
So the first thing I did, because I was like, okay, I have a purpose, so I'm going to stay here, but it doesn't feel very good. So I need to figure this out. So I invested in myself. I hired a coach. Luckily, this was someone I had met. He was actually a men's dating coach. I had met him at a healing intensive and we had been connected on Instagram, but he's not like a pickup artist type of coach. Like, he
Uh-huh.
teaches men how to be the best versions of themselves so then they attract a good quality partner, basically.
Yeah.
And so his messaging about like being authentic and all of that stuff, it would really resonate with me. So he was the first person I reached out to, and I was like, I know this is weird because I fully understand what your niche is, but I was like, but I need help. And we had a conversation
Wow.
and I worked with him. I actually worked with him for several years, and I actually credit
Wow.
him. He probably thinks he's probably very humble about this, but I truly give him credit for saving my life because I was
Wow.
in such a fragile place and I have totally turned my life around.
Mm, thank God. I'm
Yeah.
so I'm so happy to hear that. And I think that's a really important message is there's different tools and techniques and people and their messages that resonate with us. And so the other thing that's coming up for me is like if one thing or one modality doesn't work, keep fighting.
Yeah, because and the reason I specifically reached out to him as a coach is because I had tried traditional therapy, and I'm not knocking any of the things I'm about to list, but traditional therapy wasn't helpful for me because it's
Yeah.
like I would go to the therapist, and I had tried a few different therapists, and this is when I lived in Chicago, but it's like I would go and we would talk, and it would
Mm-hmm.
feel good in the moment, and then
Yep.
I would leave, and then it's like, okay, now what do I do? Like, I didn't have any practical tools to implement it. And it was same
Yeah.
thing. Like, I used to obsessively, like in my 30s, I read self-help books, but it was the same thing. It's like, here's a huge information dump. It might have some advice on how to implement it, but our lives are all so different. So like this
Yeah.
blanket advice that's in a lot of self-help books, it's really not that helpful because it's like, okay, but how do I implement that in my
Oh,
life? So it's all this information with like nothing to like practically do in your day-to-day life.
yes.
And
Yes.
also in my 30s, I was obsessed with like spiritual practices, like meditating and full moon rituals and all of that. And again, I'm not knocking any of those. As a matter of fact, I still do some of that to supplement my
Yeah.
inner growth. But the problem with that is it's not really addressing any of your issues and you feel good in the moment. And
Yeah.
then again, you walk away and then it's like, oh, now I feel like crap again.
Yeah.
So the reason why coaching worked for me is because like we would talk and then he would be like, okay, here is your homework. And the homework would be like behavior and habit
Yeah.
implementations that I could actually practice in my day to day life. And then those in turn would actually change my beliefs.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what you're speaking to, that um, that talk therapy doesn't address. And again, the way that I describe it is like talk therapy is like it opens up the vent to release some pressure.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. But there's rewiring that needs to happen. And so fortunately, I had a phenomenal trauma therapist, but she kind of separated herself from me when I wasn't kind of taking enough action. I wasn't ready to. I was like so deep
Oh,
in my trauma, but I came back around to her and she told me, she said, "Krista, if you're going to heal from complex PTSD, you have to do two things. You can't be addicted to alcohol or anything else really,
mm,
and you can't be in this relationship." I was in a narcissistic relationship.
yeah.
And so when I hit my rock bottom, and I went to a stabilization center here in Bend, Oregon, and they were phenomenal. All I needed was validation and a 4-hour nap. And I was like, I mean, that's not all I needed, but to get me back to a place of being able to fight for it. But then I really dove into the inner child healing work. It's like, for me, that is like, that has been, that and working with psychedelics have been the two biggest modalities that have rewired my brain. Like being able to close my eyes, pick up my inner child and give them everything that they needed, because those parts are still within us, and
Yeah.
they need that reassurance, right? So that's been incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah, and there are good therapists. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm not
Totally.
knocking therapist as a whole, but just the ones that I went to. And I've heard other people say that too. Like, straight up talk therapy is not helpful for everyone.
Yeah. It isn't, well, especially when there's core trauma, right? When there's
Yeah.
wired in the brain, wired trauma, you have to create a new wiring. And that requires repetition. It requires some form of slowing the brain down to get to the subconscious mind. Like it's not.
I, or even, I mean, learning emotional regulation and how to
Yeah.
feel safe in my body while feeling my feelings. I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier than stuffing it down and then later on having an emotional reaction that doesn't make sense. And,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
being
I had
able to
never learned
calm the
that
nervous
before.
system. Yeah, beautiful. So talk about your glow method.
Yes. So I am now an inner glow coach. I actually was in corporate America for over 20 years. And through my healing journey, I'm like, it just didn't align with who I was. And
Mhm.
I finally came to this point. I was like, I know there are other women going through what I went through. So I quit my job and I started helping women go through the same journey. And my glow method, it's an acronym, so G stands for go back to your childhood, because to what we
Mhm.
were just talking about, all of our trauma is somehow based in our childhood.
Yep.
And if you don't address that, anything else is just a band aid solution, which is just going to be a short term solution. So you have to address whatever that thing is. And
Yeah.
that's how you can figure out, yeah, the behavior patterns that you have to rewire. And that becomes
Mhm.
a long term solution. L stands for light yourself up, because to go
Mhm.
back a second, my coaching program, my current one, is called Shine from the Inside. And it's based on this concept that we're all born with this light inside of us. You know, because you see kids, they like run around and they're screaming and they don't care what anyone thinks. And then you go along life and, you know, family systems or society or whoever tells you, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. And so our light slowly starts to get dim because we're trying to
Yeah.
conform to all these things outside of us. So it's not about fixing yourself, because that's another thing. I feel like a lot of self-help books, it's like, this is what's wrong with you and you need to
Yeah.
fix yourself.
Yeah.
But it's about coming back home to who you really are.
Mhm.
So the L is light yourself up, because as you're probably aware, to like, you know, have these new habits and behaviors is absolutely a process, but there's quick wins that you can have immediately by tapping into that inner light that you had as a child and coming
Yeah.
back home to that. And then O stands for overcome external validation, because again, we lose
Yes.
ourselves because we're giving to everything outside of ourselves. But when your validation is internally sourced, that's how you shine from the inside. And then
Yeah.
W is welcome yourself back home, because again, it's not about fixing yourself, it's just remembering who you are.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is it. It's coming back to essence. It's coming back to what you were born into innately,
Yeah.
with just love and beauty, but also your special gifts, right? We
Yeah.
all have these magical special gifts that we get to tap into, and the process of getting to know your authentic self is really a beautiful and special and sacred journey.
Yeah, because like I was so far removed from my authentic self. It was like this complete identity change. But the funny thing was that I realized, I was like, this is why I didn't like myself before, because I didn't like who I was when I was pretending or
Yeah.
performing or whoever. And I was like, but I actually really like who I am.
No doubt, no doubt. So, what are some practical tips you would give folks just that are tuning in on how they can start this process of really unraveling the old programming and the old hurts and the lack of love and the lack of touch, whatever it was, and start to bring that and cultivate that in their life today?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, so I don't know what
Mhm.
everyone's childhood issues are, but usually the main advice I give people, because I feel like these are the things that people struggle with the most. Number one is boundaries, because like boundaries are the highest form of self respect. And because I used to have zero boundaries, so
Yeah,
I'm speaking from experience. And then once I truly started to respect myself, I truly started to believe, like, hey, I deserve to protect my peace. And it became
yeah.
that much easier. So it's not always an easier, fun process, but trust me, it's always worth it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then the other thing I highly, highly recommend is, we were talking about this earlier, tapping into your intuition, because we're all born with
Mhm.
it. Sometimes we get disconnected from it, but it's like this magic, and it's inside of us. And all you have to
Yeah.
do is plug into it. And tapping into your intuition, that is the highest form of self trust. Because you mentioned that earlier. Because I
Yeah,
didn't trust my intuition because I didn't trust myself. And I feel like a lot of
totally.
people tend to do this. It's like, you want to like take someone else's advice, or because everyone else has an opinion on what you should or should not be doing, but you're the only person who knows. So when you have that level of self trust, you can't be shaken with like, this is what you should be doing, this is what you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like self respect, self trust, those are like the two highest forms of self love.
And I
And the
want to piggyback on that really
yeah,
quick because I know when people are in crisis or there's a lot coming at them, our brain is in overdrive. Like
yeah,
it's literally impossible to tap into your intuition because there's so much that's being processed and overwhelmed. It's almost it's not almost, it is a vicious cycle. So to add to that, I would recommend even guided meditations. Like I
yeah.
mean, there's some in Cricket Fixes, there's some on YouTube, but really being able to slow down the mind. And I tend to tell people that have a really busy overactive mind where they can't get out of their head if they're using words like that, to use a guided meditation so that it's giving their brain something to
Mm,
follow
yeah,
versus trying to come up with it on your own can feel like you are the salmon swimming upstream. Like
yeah.
this is not happening.
That's a that's a good way to describe it. Well, and also because I didn't learn this initially when I started developing my intuition, but nervous system regulation plays such a huge role. Yeah, because when you're anxious or like in
Yeah.
these like more negative vibrations, it's so much harder to tap into your intuition. So
Yep.
now I treat my nervous system like it's a baby, because I'm like like
Because it is. It's the most
yeah,
precious thing.
so I
It,
need to be tapped into my intuition at all times. So I'm like, I'm
well,
gonna keep doing this.
it's so interesting that I don't know if you do much EFT tapping, but
I don't.
I teach a ton of EFT tapping and cricket fixes. Um, And when you say tap into, that's literally what
Mm,
you're doing is you're slowing down your nervous system. You're tapping into the energy meridians so that you can get
mm.
answers. So I'll share that as a little
Yeah,
takeaway too. Yeah. Anyone can join the free Cricket Fixes community and come in and tap with me. But
I
that's like a
actually want
great
to
way
do that.
to, yeah, please do. We would
So
love to
I
have you.
tried tapping once, but it was at
Mhm.
a time in my life where I had really high anxiety and it just
Yeah.
gave me anxiety. So I'm in a different place now though. So I think it would be
Yeah.
different.
And you know, that's great feedback too. Like and in those moments, if somebody was sharing that with me, I would ask them what feels anxious about it, right? Because I usually recommend EFT tapping to people that are anxious because you can get through it fast.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
so sometimes I'll tell people, um, hang in there with me because this is going to go really fast. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. And we can do it a few times, but sometimes knowing the why behind how it's working too can
Yeah,
be
because
really like, don't fucking make me do this fucking tapping bullshit that I don't understand and nothing's happening. Right? Like,
yeah, because I don't remember the circumstances, but I guarantee that was it. I was probably because it
yeah,
wasn't with another person. I was probably
yeah,
watching a YouTube video, and they're
yeah.
probably just like, "Do this, do that," and so that
Yeah.
just
And
adds to
you're
my
like, this
stress.
sucks. This does nothing. But when you understand the mechanics behind it,
Yeah.
right? So I look at everything from what does the brain want and what does the brain need, right?
Mm,
So the brain wants an activity. It wants to understand. It wants reason behind it, oftentimes. And then once you get past a few layers, then you can start to trust more of like spiritual things and energy and things like that that it doesn't need. But then that second thing is what does it need, right? But if the brain can go, oh, this is why we're doing it. And I always tell people too, you have permission to hate it.
mm.
And as soon as you tell someone they have permission to dislike it, they release because that's the protection, right? And this is another thing. I'm so glad we're talking about
Yeah, I
this.
am too.
This is really important. People resist change. Like they will resist something that they've been told by 500 people. This is good for you. This works. This is science based. Trust me, right? They will still resist it because the brain, even in anxiety and chaos, wants to hold on to the familiar because the
Yeah.
familiar equals safety. So, even like anyone listening right now, as you go to rewire, you will find this resistance because that is your survival mechanism coming in saying, no, we can't change. Because if we change, then there's a tiger around the corner and I won't be able to protect it if I don't
Yeah.
know the path that I'm on. That's
Because it's
all it is.
and it's actually a very healthy response because that never goes away. Like I
Yeah.
still encounter that, but I can at least recognize it for what it is and I
Yeah.
don't let it hinder me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we still have safety mechanisms in the brain, like our amygdala, that that are operating like we were in caveman days when we don't have those same threats. They show up differently,
Yeah.
like social media overwhelm and comparison. Like so these threats show up in different ways, but I often say like hang out with me. Just hang out here a little bit longer. And you can hate it. Great. As long as I can hate it, then I'll do it.
I actually love that because again, that's like giving someone space to feel how they
Yes.
feel. Yeah.
Yes. It's validating their experience. I swear to God, validation has to be like my favorite way to help us all take a deep breath and soften and go, maybe this could be it. Yeah. What a great conversation.
Yeah,
I
I love
love this.
this.
I love this. So, Angie, what's the easiest way that someone could connect with you if they wanted to learn more about your glow method or how you work or get your book?
Yes, the easiest way is my website, runninginslippers.com, which is also the name of my book. So there's information about my book, obviously. It's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, and I do narrate the audiobook. I know
I love that.
audiobook listeners love that. Yeah.
I love that.
And then there's also information about my current coaching program. It's called Shine from the Inside, and it's a one-on-one program, and I help women who chase love and approval transform to radiating confidence from within and actually shine from the inside. And I do offer a free 60-minute Find Your Glow session so it's 60 minutes, we can work on whatever you're struggling with. Most
I
people do
love
have a
that.
breakthrough in that time because we can identify what your thing is from childhood. And then once
Yeah.
you realize what that is, you can figure out what the next steps are going forward. And my coaching program is not for everyone. I can give you more information on the call on my coaching program, but if it's not a good fit, I know other coaches, I
Yeah.
have other resources. The whole point is to get you help because again, I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of people struggling. And for me, when I was in that situation, I didn't know where to get help. I didn't know what kind of help I needed. So this
Yeah.
is just basically a discovery to, figure out where you
What's
need
next on
help
your path?
and
Yeah.
what modality is best for you.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes for you too. And then for anyone listening, please join the Cricket Fixes community. It's free. We come in, we hang in all the messy stuff together, but I also teach you really easy techniques, inner child healing, EFT tapping, some of my favorite things, some breath work, just things that are going to help us all navigate this wild world together. Angie, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so honored to be a part of just shining a light on your purpose and your gifts. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I love this so much.
All right, well, let's do this. Are you ready for your own personal transformation? Tired of the patterns that are holding you back, and you're ready to finally unleash your authentic self? Head over to cricketfixes.com. You're going to find memberships packed with life-changing courses, exclusive discounts to the partner marketplace, and a community that's already waiting to welcome you in. You can join for free or go all in and start your next chapter today.